Welcome back to today's episode, everyone. Today I have Tom Ahern from Green Life Gardens out of Omaha. We had a fantastic conversation about his business and his life, and can't wait for you guys to hear it. So let's jump and dive into it.
Not that we're not setting trends by any means, but people come to us when cost really isn't a factor, and they want to be certain that they're going to get what they want, and that's what happens when they typically come here. We still do a lot of other smaller projects. They're competitive bids and all that stuff, but the majority of the big stuff I do is, usually it's a personal phone call saying, "Hey, I know so and so," and I usually tell them what I think it'll cost, and if that's not going to work, we're not a good fit. And 80% of the time, they take offense to that and say, we're not based, or because I want to know, are you basing your decision off cost? And I always preface that with, because I would want to know. But at the same time, we're not the company that you're going to pick if cost is a factor. So I tell people that, and I said, hey, it's no big deal. There's companies for everybody and price points for everybody. And I've kind of ironed this thing out over the years. And what it's done is, in a sense, kind of put the ball in their court, because I don't want to waste a minute of my time, because some of these extensive designs I do can take 30 to 50 hours. So to do all that, and these are $500,000 to $1 million, backyards and stuff. So they just take a ton of time to figure out. And, so I do a fair amount of pre-qualifying early on, and I'd say 1 out of 5 that call me are like, okay, well, never mind. But the other 4 already know they probably already asked their friend or whoever how much they paid. And so that the benefits of having steady referrals, like, you can't put a price on that. And I don't take it for granted. As a matter of fact, it's almost pressure, to maintain. And that's where this AI thing comes in. And, I've kind of I do a fair amount of seminars and HNA and traveling to just go see stuff and talk to people. And, I think this is going to be helpful to maintain our reputation, to be kind of cutting edge, and not even consider other people's trends. We just do what we want to do, and people really, really, really appreciate that, I guess.
Yeah.
And we're not for everybody. Some people are like, no, I don't need the Taj Mahal here. I'm like, okay, well, I can do that too. Just let's talk about it. What is your budget? It's not $1 million. Okay, it's 20 grand. Okay, well, here's what we can do for 20. And whether that aligns with them, I have no idea. Usually find out right there.
Nice. I like the way you approach that, actually, because with my last company that I owned, we were kind of like that.
Mm-hmm.
We were not going for the people with tight budgets. We were more approaching the higher end people, the higher end counties as well. Like that was our target. Yeah, I don't know. For me, it just felt like a better client to work with. I feel like it's less headaches. It's more
Well,
work, but less headache, in my opinion. But that was
it's
just from
just
my
a whole nother
industry.
set of problems that you don't know until you're there. And I get a fair amount of people. I know a lot of other guys. Omaha is like a heavy landscape town.
Is it?
We're authorized Unilock contractors. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. So you've heard of Unilock?
No.
Okay, so Unilock's a hardscape paver block company, and they're based out of Toronto. Teco Block and Unilock are the 2 high-end pavers in our industry. And their square foot prices range from 10 to 20 bucks a square foot. Or if you go to like a Lowe's or Home Depot, theirs are $3 to $4 a square foot. People that have come to me and be like, how do you guys get all that work? And I don't really know how to answer that, because it's not like I set out one day to be like, hey, I want to do all the big, fancy, complicated shit in Omaha. Like, that was never a thought in my mind. And what happened though is, early on, you just get a few opportunities, and these guys that have asked me, I've said, I go, man, you might have already gotten your opportunity and blown it. You don't know that, because if you get a connection with a pool builder or a really nice custom home builder and you end up on the same property, like, I can't wait for opportunities like that, because I can't wait to shake the builder's hand, introduce myself, tell them about Green Life, because the majority of my work comes from 1 of 5 relationships, and my referrals. So I have 3 pool builders that can almost bi-weekly send me, pool projects that they want to work with me on. Then I have 2 or 3 pretty nice custom home builders. So like I spend most of my time nurturing those relationships because those relationships, they put about $2.5 million in green life every year. And when you're doing 10 to 15 million, you know, I hate to say it, but those people, those relationships are going to come well before everybody else. And not that those other people are going to get treated poorly. It's just that, once you get these relationships uh, that are going to consistently give you high end, good work that people aren't going to bitch about cost, like they're worth their weight in gold. And if you get one of those, your company changes. If you get two, three, if you get five or four like we do, like our biggest concern right now is I don't know how we're going to keep on schedule with them because they dictate our schedule a lot of times. So it's like this new set of problems you have of, yeah, this is great. We got a steady flow, but like, how the hell am I going to make this all work and keep them happy so they don't want to go look for some other guy? So it's like, the bigger and better things get, like, you're like, oh, it's just going to get easier. No, it gets a lot harder, and that's by choice. Like, you can choose to stay stagnant and plateau and just stay in your comfort zone, or you can continue to push the limits, which I've done both. And sitting stagnant is, I get restless and irritable like quick. And I'm like, this is lame. Anybody can do this. Like, I've always kind of sold myself as you're going to get something that other people won't think of. That's kind of my spiel, and I have to back that up, and if I can't back it up, this isn't going to work out. So, like, the pressure that comes with it, I
Yeah.
gladly welcome it, but people don't think about that. And I'm not going to complain about it because nobody's, poor you, man. So it is what it is. And it can be a kind of a lonely island of a place to be because it's hard to relate. But, that's why I have, like, I'm a really strong believer. I have a really good network at church. I'm in a business group at church, so I have people around me outside of work that I can go to. And this was simply by, I didn't come up with any of these ideas. I'll be real clear on that. I learned everything significantly in my life by royally screwing something up. And most construction landscapers can say the same thing is, oh, how'd you learn how to do that? Well, let me tell you, this $50,000 nightmare story from 3 years ago. And so, yeah, man, I, 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 I'm not complaining, but I guess it's just a moment to say, hey, if you keep pushing the limits, and the tough part, like we need three more foremen right now and we can't get them. Like, we could add three crews in the next 2 months, but to expect those guys to do what we do to the level we do it at is just unfair. We've tried it and it blows up in our face, it blows up in their face. So it's like, to grow a company like this and to maintain your standards is because we have eight install crews and we need 10 or 11. And it's just so hard and frustrating because, like, we're missing out right now. But to do the things that we can lower our standards today and do more revenue, but who the hell wants to do that?
But what do you think would probably get those guys to that level? Is it just a lot of time and training? Is that
Well, so this is another thing that just years and years and years of interviewing, for lack of a better term, the bottom of the barrel. So the construction industry, if you need cheap labor, you're going to get every walk of life coming through the door. So, our job is I got 10 to 20 minutes here to decide if this guy is worth the risk or not. And I almost talk, if they don't have experience and they haven't been in our industry, like, I spend 2 or 3 minutes almost talking them out of the job. And I tell
mm,
them what it's really like, pushing wheelbarrows uphill in the rain, that's a thing that happens, you know. So I give them all these, because I used to, like, they'll find out, but like, no, I'm done with that because I want them to kind of accept the challenge, and I want the words to come out of their mouth after I explain that uh, I can do that. I'm not worried about that, but I know that doesn't mean shit. Words don't mean nothing. I'm like, all right, well, we'll see. And, so we spend a fair amount of time on just having those conversations. And for as much as I hate to say it, like, the properties that we're on, like, your appearance means a lot. How clean your truck is, what kind of rust, if there's rust, like how your tools, like all that stuff is a
hmm
very big part of our operation. When people show up with muddy jeans that have holes on them, like, they're going to get pulled aside and be like, dude, you can't go to the hoax house It's a $6 million gated estate and you look like a bum. And he's like, well, I'm a landscaper. I'm like, yeah, you are. You're a high-end luxury landscaper. That's not how we look. So there's a lot of training and just we'll get guys from other companies that, they may have good structure within them, but there's so many bad habits to break. So it's hard for us to get people, you know, to do what we want to do because we just, for as busy as we are, we can't have, like, we have to reduce our turnover as much as we can. And if that means not hire as many people and not fire as many people, I guess that's what that means. So I just know that it's very tempting to just put a crew together and kind of limp them along and just assume it's going to work. Like we've done that, and there hasn't been a time I haven't regretted it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Are you, out of curiosity, are you leading in terms of
No matter what.
priciest company in your area?
Well, we're one of three or four.
Okay.
We bid against the same two, three, four companies on most of the big stuff. And we all kind of, one day I'm the most, the next day they are, like we're all within 5 to 10% of each other. And it depends on their design. Like, apples to apples, we're pretty darn close, I think.
What about team size? Who's probably has the largest?
Um,
How's their hiring process look like? That's are they getting the same talent as you are?
well, they've been around since the 60s. We've been around since 2001. They have a full, like, we have 25, 30 acres here. We don't do any retail. Like, they have an enormous retail center. Like, the amount of exposure they have in Omaha is incredible. They actually have their own development company, so they develop new neighborhoods and commercial properties. So to try and compete with that, like you're just spinning your tires, you can't. You just get what you can wear, and to try and change that is I don't think you're ever going to get anywhere. But Chris Lanahaw, the owner of it now, I meet with him regularly, and he has the same fight we have. He just has to go through more people to get the people we have. But he said that I have to take more risks. We're bigger. We need more people, so I have to roll the dice a little more often, which means the outcome isn't always what we want. But he's like, it's like anything. You just figure this out over years of
Yeah.
what works for you, and it may be different across town for another company. But what works for us and the people we have in our processes is it's like we don't really know anything else. So when we hear other ways companies do things, I'm always very receptive to that. Like, if there's an easier, quicker way of doing something, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What you're talking about, it reminds me of my buddy. So my best friend, he owns the second largest distributor in the tri-state area for dairy products. He went through hell for years, but then he just said, "Fuck it, I'm going to run ads and just put up numbers." Interview, interview, interview for months on end.
And that's kind of how it worked with us going from who we were to who we are now. We were a traditional, more softscape company, plants, trees, mulch, maintenance, mowing. And like my background, like I have a construction management and a little bit of an engineering background along with like landscape architecture. So I love the construction side of things. And, when I first started in this industry in the late 90s, I didn't touch a paved patio until probably 2003 because nobody did it back then. And I'd say in the last 20, 25 years, I've seen statistics on this and I don't remember what they are, but what Unilock or Belgard's numbers were from the 90s to what they are now, we're talking like thousands of percents in increase. So, one, I enjoy it. It's a passion of mine, like just figuring out, like, part of my favorite, like, I love the whole process of what I do. I like the design. I like all of it, and I like managing the projects, and I still like my therapy is, at least once, twice a month, I'm going to spend a couple hours to a half day with a crew, and I put my phone away and I work and I do stuff, and it's therapeutic because I'm not dealing. It brings me back 20, 25 years to where I had one thing to worry about, which was right in front of me, and I'm in complete control of it. Whereas now there's 75 things that I don't have control over. So it's just going back to this simpler time for me to like just clear everything. So like I love all the different aspects of this, so that I think that's what's helped me, like, I guess, and it's not just me. Like we have three other designers. Like we have, us, I should say, not me, but we all love the outdoor living side of things. And when you realize like it's kind of intimidating to get into, because if you see some projects like some of these $500,000 pool projects, it's like where do I even start? Like how do I figure this out? Like you know so to do all that, like that kept me from like pursuing that. But how do you pursue big luxurious jobs? You can't. Like that's the $1 million question everybody asks online, is how do I get big jobs? And I've been asked that, and I said, hey, it comes down to an opportunity. That's step one, is you got to get an opportunity. And the second part, which I think is important, and I didn't know this at the time, is I didn't even know it was my opportunity. Like you don't know what you have sometimes until you lose it or you get it. And I didn't I didn't do real well on that one. And I reached out to him much later, and nothing really came of it. But the next opportunity I had, I just made it a point, for that contractor. I remember I said, hey, let me take you to lunch tomorrow. I've never met. Let's talk for a minute. And it's blossomed into, probably 500 to $1 million a year from that contractor. The hardest part here is I can talk and talk and talk like I'm doing to you right now and sound really, really good. But if all these crews and all these guys aren't half as talented as I claim them to be, I get exposed real fast, and I'm out of a job probably. So I have to be really careful on setting expectations for some of these people, because we do have, like, our guys try to get other companies try to poach our guys regularly, and they're making 80 to 100, $110,000 a year. They've been doing this for 25 years, and they can do things that people can't. And that's why they can almost set their own wage. So we've based our labor rates off our foremen. Whatever they get paid, we're going to base it around that, and they get treated like royalty. They're not getting away with things. They've earned everything that they get, the trust that they have, and all that. We have maybe 4 foremen like that, and then we have 3 that are in process where they're not there yet. And so there's always a sequence going on somewhere in a way to figure out how to improve things. But yeah, to add on to this, like I've interviewed, I think, 7 potential foremen in the last 3 or 4 months, and there was one that I was really close to considering, and the rest, they were almost no brainers. Like, hey, okay, you've done this before. Let me see your. If you've done this before, every landscaper has 100 pictures on their phone. And if you've done this before and I ask you for your pictures and you say you don't have any, that's a huge red flag, because most landscapers are pretty proud of their work. The guys that do pull their phone out and I can scroll freely through all their work, because this was a spontaneous question. They didn't know I was going to ask this. And I want to see that stuff. And that is a big factor in what I do. I want to talk, and I know it's more work on my end, but if you're not calling referrals and talking to people they've worked with or they know, like you're missing. Yes, it's more work. It's easy to be like, God, I don't want to call that guy. I don't even know him, and talk about some dude I don't even know. Like, yeah, I get it, but like, you're gonna regret it if you don't. And I've learned all of this by royally screwing it up and it blowing up in my face, and be like, okay, we don't want that to happen again. I wish I could learn from other people's mistake and just absorb it. That's not how I work, and I'm not proud of that either. Like, it's not like a notch in the belt. It's like I need to work on this. Oh, yeah, it's probably one of our biggest. And it's tempting. I know other foremen at other companies. I have their phone numbers, but I'd never do that, just because being a big believer, I just know that'll come back around and someone's going to get one amiga. I think through stuff like that. Like, there's consequences for all my actions, good or bad. No matter what I do, there's going to be something. So it's like I got to think about that, because I have so many opportunities to cut corners every day. Do whatever This is a big, big training point with our crews. Is I don't know how many opportunities a hardscape crew gets a day to cut a corner. I'm guessing 50 to 100, if not more. Just little things that nobody would ever know about. I get fixated on those. Like, what are you doing when no one's around? I want to know where your integrity's at. Do you look over your shoulder, make sure no one's watching, and then do this? Or do you just be like, no matter what, this is what I'm going to do? Those are the guys I want. And I'm finding some of it is trainable, but for the most part, you either have it or you don't. Some of it can be learned, but you got to start with something that we have, or else this just isn't going to work for you.
What would be the factor for you to automatically hire somebody? Like, let's say even if they weren't capable of
It's
or
a gut.
that you're looking for, but what characteristic that would you specifically be looking for to be like, I'm willing to give them a chance?
A fine line between confidence and humility. So there's guys that come in and 10 seconds out, like, oh God, you're just bragging and you're going to try and one up us. And you have no idea who you're in the room with, even in our experience. So it's kind of fun to listen to people just spill their guts when they don't really know they're talking to people that I guess well, have been doing this 10 times longer than them. That's always kind of fun. Sometimes I call them out, sometimes I let it expose itself. But the main thing is like punctuality. Um, for a foreman position, like you gotta be able to carry conversations. Like if you're gonna be pushing a wheelbarrow and your interview doesn't go real well, but your your people check out that I called and all this, like yeah, you're 18, $20 an hour. That's an easy risk for me. It's these foremen that can get up there, and then the responsibility they have. That's more so than the money. Is just what is at stake, in their control. Like they could knock this thing out, or they could cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars. And we've got a couple of foremen right now that I wish we probably should have waited another year, but they're finally getting up to speed. It takes almost a full season or two for our guys. They may have been a laborer on our crew for 3 years. It's still going to take a good season or two of repetition and mistakes and victories for them to find. You can finally feel their confidence, because there's a guy named Rylan right now that he's doing a pretty good job. He asks a lot of questions, but you can just feel the kind of the insecurity. He's taking, and it's a good thing because he's taking this very seriously. If he was not fazed by this, and if he was messing stuff up and I was bringing it to attention, this really wasn't bothering him, like that's not my guy. Like I want my guy that's going to be hard on himself, that if he lets something go, it's going to bother him that night at home. That's me, and that's the guys I want, and the majority of them are like that. Like I've done that to where I've let something go. A couple days later, I still think about it. Like I got to go back there and do this. It's gonna take me 10 minutes, but I do that, semi regularly. If it bothers me, I go do it. If it goes away, it goes away. I kind of let my internal determine some of that stuff. So but coming back to find that right foreman, experience is as important as anything else. If they haven't felt the weight of a large project, the responsibility of a large project, and what it feels like to manage 2 to 3 other guys and to occasionally deal with a homeowner, we're not the company you're going to learn on. Kind of like designers. We haven't hired a designer at a college in 10, 15 years, because we get them all the time, and we ask them, hey, you can start here, but you'll be an assistant. You probably won't sell a job for a year. And that's if we think you've got the potential to do it. So it's just we're not that. If you're starting up in your career, maybe as a laborer, we work in, but we just prefer people that have learned someone else, or learned somewhere else on someone else's dollar.
Yeah.
If they don't, that's the thing though, that there's the fine line there. Experience is great, but if it's bad experience, it's a lot of work on our end to straighten that out. Which we've got a couple of guys that are both laborers and they've got experience, but they've got a couple of bad habits. They don't feel as if our way is necessary, and that's not abnormal. That's pretty normal when we get guys from other companies like that. The way you guys clean the street and driveway every night just seems a little excessive. Little do they know. When we start a large project, I go to the neighbors on both sides of our house. I give them my card. I introduce myself and I say, "Hey, if there's any problems whatsoever, please don't call the homeowners. It's not their problem. This is my problem." So they already have enough on their plate, enough to worry about. Like, don't bring this to them, please. This is our thing. So when that's done, honestly, that is the respectable thing to do. But there's tactic behind that. I got my face and my card in 2 more houses that I want to work at because they're $2 million houses. I may never hear from them, But at the end of that project, when we're cleaning up, or whatever, I've gotten reviews on Google from neighbors on our cleanup. And once I start telling, I took screenshots because people don't believe me. And I show these guys this and I go, this is why we do this. I go, and this is why we're different than everybody else. I know I see companies leave 8 pallets a block with 3 orange cones on it in the street for a weekend. I take pictures of it. I send it out to our Slack channel at Green Life. I'm like, this is why we do what we do. Because there was like a traffic jam and all this shit, and the customer was getting their butt ripped. And I'm like, why would you do that? Like, there's other ways to do this. I know it's inconvenient and more work, but like, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
So it's just stuff like that that makes it really hard to find our guys.
Makes
But and the temptation to kind of get complacent and be like, it'll be fine is so strong most times. But I know we know what the answer is, and we know what we have to do. And you try not to let emotion make these decisions.
Yeah. So much.
Which is easier said than done when your ass is on fire.
Yeah, it sounds like you made it part of your culture.
Well, cultures, it is. It's a big. We spend. I don't even want to know like how many hours a year we spend on culture. Company-wide meetings, manager meetings. We have a little program within our company called Plus One. So if we're on a property, we're going to look for opportunities, whether it's pull their trash cans in, roll their hose up, close their gate, anything that's like 5 to 15 minutes that has nothing to do with what we're doing. And whenever we do that, we make sure not to tell them. When we do those things and we tell them, it takes the fizz out of it. The best is when a week later they realize and I get a text go and say, hey, did your guys do this when we were there? And I'm like, yeah, we did. And the reception I get from that, like, they can't pass our name on quick enough. It's just little things like that that mean so much, I've found, where it's so easy to forget them because you get busy with everything else. But those little things have gotten me further than I could ever imagine, because they mean, if you keep doing them, even when you don't see the fruit of it, kind of like what you were saying, like your buddy, like he didn't see fruit for a long time. And that's why most people quit, because the shit gets hard. And it's like, I can't do this. Like everything in you's telling you to do something different. But if you have that thing, I don't know what it's called, but I think you know what I'm talking about, to where failure is not an option. And I've damn near killed myself proving this point, to a fault, so like some of these behaviors have gotten me a long way. I have to identify when they're harmful, which is pretty hard for me to do. Usually the people around me are the ones that are going to identify those. And we do it like, that's another thing. Our culture here is like, if you aren't open to criticism from coming from a positive place in like a good heart position, you're not going to last here. Because I asked for feedback. I go, look at my design, and this may be to a third or fourth year designer, but they may see something I don't. So like we want to create that environment, and we got to maintain it, because if we don't maintain it, it'll go away. So we just do a part to get, like on my big projects, I'll have another designer or two look at almost all of them. And I may have it all figured out, but and there's been times where a guy that's been doing this a fraction of the time sees something that I don't. And I'm like, it's a little humbling, but it's like, hey, it is what it is. And just, don't get bent out of shape over it, lean into it and use these people, And that was something that I could have never done 15 years ago, just push my pride aside. But if you do this long enough, you don't become humble. Humility is administered to you because you don't ask for it. I guess if you stick it out long enough, like you become calloused to a point to where things that affected you once just don't affect you like they did. And thank God for that, because if it was as hard as it was 20 years ago, we wouldn't be talking.
What do you think is probably the most overwhelming part of the company for you?
Well, I make it a point to never think about this. And when I do, I have to physically do something. But the big picture of, just the responsibility of all these people's livelihoods, when I don't like thinking about this, because it's overwhelming and intimidating when you think about 65 people's families and rent and mortgages. And like, even right now, like I can feel the anxiety kind of build. It's not bad, but like if I let myself sit here, it gets kind of freaky. But what gets me out of that is, and I may have led you on, but like this is by no means a me operation. There's a lot of people that have a lot of responsibility that I have nothing to do with. And that's how that has to go. So just thinking about the big picture, but then to break it down on more of a day to day basis of what gets me is, and I don't like admitting this, but I check in on my projects not quite every day like I do because if I were to check on I would never get anything done in the office. I'd just be driving around. So we do like a lot of FaceTime calls, and we figured out a way to be me to be here, them to be there. But I guess the point that I was trying to get at was the day to day stuff is like once I leave, like, if we're working on something that we haven't done a whole lot, or say it's a newer material, or say it's a little transition that's kind of squirrely, like there's always that happening when you have 8 jobs with 5 of them are pretty extravagant. So there's always something going on that could go wrong. And you have, if I attempt to try and control that or monitor it, like it's really overwhelming. So I have to trust in these people just like they trust in me. And and that's the thing, at the end of the day, yeah, it pays our bills, but we're not brain surgeons. We dig holes and run equipment and stack blocks. So if we screw something up, we're not talking fatalities. Well, I shouldn't say that, safety wise, but if we screw a job up, we can fix it. We've had to do that before. So it's like if you really break it down, like, yes, of course we don't want to do that and lose money and do all that. But if we do, it's okay. And let's learn from that and get better. So it's like once I get that frame of mind in, like the tension, anxiety, and the overwhelmment just kind of fades. It's like, hey, we're all professionals here. We've all proven to one another that we can do all this stuff. And usually that and a little bit of prayer, that never hurts, usually just kind of sets my heart at ease and I can kind of refocus and concentrate on what I'm doing.
At least I got a sense of how much you care for your team. Because if you didn't, then you wouldn't have anxiety about it.
That's funny because there's a couple of managers that carry one thing I've been really good at over the years. I got better. It's like when I leave work, I leave work. I don't bring it home for the most part. Well, that's just it. Like, and that comes back to like the level of our projects. It's not something. It's not really up to me. It's I can make the decision to care less, And I've tried to do that, and it's like the most uncomfortable thing I've ever done is to not care about something I'm passionate about. Have you ever tried that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like when we're building a project and say they build this corner and the way they slugged in to get back on half bond isn't the way we normally do it. That's a tough one for me because I know the homeowner's never going to notice. And I know that if I have them fix this, it's going to cost us. And if I don't have them fix this, they're going to think it's okay. So I find myself, and sometimes these are small, little, tiny situations, and sometimes they're big ones. So it's like that's basically weighing out the situation that's pretty regular for me. They can give me some stress of like, do I make this a deal or not? And not 8, 9 out of 10 times we're going to take it apart and fix it. Unless there's some outside circumstances that just obviously this would be really dumb to do, which is rare. But that's something that is a relatively normal challenge of just the lack of control. As you grow, there's a lot of. I'm sure you're on those hardscape sites. There's a lot of guys out there that are nationally known and sponsored by Unilock and Site One and all these crazy things, and they have 5 employees and they do one project at a time, and the owner is everything. And if he's not on the job doing it, the projects aren't going to look like that. And I've talked to a few of those guys, and they're stuck. They're like, either I find guys that can do what I do, and he's doing what he needs to do. He goes, I know I have my guys that I'm going to train within, and when they're ready, they're ready. They're not going to be ready as soon as I want them to be, but like that, he feels like it's his only way right now. He goes, because I can't lower my give a shit. That's impossible. Like, and I've tried that, and I laughed out loud. I'm like, I've tried that, and that's the most uncomfortable thing I've ever done is just not do something you're supposed to do, especially and expect to get paid for it. That's the big difference. Is if I'm at home and I forget to weed eat this time when I mowed because I was tired, who gives a crap, but we're billing this work out. And one of my biggest pet peeves is when a little detail that I was unaware of is brought to me by a homeowner and the foreman knew about it and didn't bring it to my attention. So when I look like the idiot, because usually I've got a few, I've found ways to kind of get out of that conversation without looking like a complete idiot. But when I go to my foreman, I'm like, hey man, you know, this was pretty uncomfortable for me, and this could have been, avoided really easily about 3 weeks ago. And we're going to talk, and that's in that moment, we're going to talk about kind of what led up to it when you saw it and what you were thinking when you decided to leave it. Like, that's what I want to know. And I'm not a yeller. I don't, you got to be, if you're going to be critical of very experienced, talented artists of hardscapers, if you don't deliver that with the most respect that you can sum up, like it's not going to go well. You got to respect these dudes. Like, they're so talented, and you just trust them with anything because we've worked together for so long. They've proven everything to me at this point. Like, you don't have to prove anything anymore. But we've got three guys that are 30 to 50% proven. That's the majority of my focus is, the amount of attention those three crews get is 10 times more than the other ones, because for obvious reasons. So hopefully next year, I know if we add another crew or two, it'll be more of the same. But I know these three crews that are newer are going to they'll look a lot different next year.
What are your two
goals,
to three goals in the next 12 months?
I'm going to sidebar real quick here. Like, I've gotten, I think, 13 phone calls and about 25 texts during this. So if I've tuned out at all, that's what that is.
Jesus.
Yeah. The three, the main thing is just keep getting better, and that gets so damn old, is always pushing the limits. But if you've lived in that for so long, it's just is what it is. Like, it's not new. I think the next would be to establish, well, I think a realistic expectation is one more really good polished crew in a year. And I feel like that's attainable, but I know it certainly couldn't happen too, but it's a goal. And then this is another big one, is to retain everybody we have right now. A seasonal business, the lengths we go to retain people, is quite a bit. So, like, it snows here, obviously, and we get between 20 and 35 inches a winter, and which doesn't amount to much when you have like 35 trucks or whatever. But we don't depend upon snow. We don't budget for it because you don't know. It's kind of all the gravy on top. But we have shop hours. So, we have 35 trucks. We have a lot of equipment and stuff. So we basically go through everything that we own, paint it, maintain it, fix it, all of our trucks, equipment, and then our yard. We go through all of our yard, reorganize, clean up. So, and then we do a program where if you commit to snow, all in, you get 10 free hours a week, January and February. So that's 80 free hours. Plus you'll get your shop hours. So we started this probably 6-7 years ago because, like, and it was scary as hell to commit to this just with the cost. But what it's done is we haven't really lost any key players. They get to work year round. Our key players still get 30, 40 hours a week in the off season, which is rare for a landscape company. A lot of people put them on, just unemployment, or they go get like a side job or whatever they're going to do. And that's just given them a lot of opportunities to find something else, we found. So, some of the other companies in town that we kind of learned it from other companies, what they're doing, and it works. It keeps people here. The pace is nothing like it is right now. And it's like, here's your task for the day. You get to go home. It's up to you how long you want to work today. So it's very complimentary, but without doing that, we wouldn't have everybody, I know we wouldn't, things happen like that. So just the amount of work it takes to keep everybody you want to keep, and people in their pettiness, some days it doesn't seem worth it. And then there's days, obviously, yes, it's worth it, but like, and you do care that much, and I guess you help people out. I guess kind of being in a management position, like, if you're in it for the accolades and the pats on the back, you're going to be real disappointed. You're the one that needs to give all the accolades, like, every now and again. Yeah, good job. But that's not why this works like this, so it's just kind of, and that's another thing. Like I went to 5 years of college, and 90% of the stuff I use on a daily basis wasn't learned in college. It's learned along the way, that's for sure.
I hear that.
Yeah.
I didn't get the opportunity to go to college. Well, I dropped out of high school.
Some of my best guys dropped out of high school, man. School wasn't for them. They found their passion and they're just one of the best at it. It's just school wasn't for them.
Yeah.
So nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I was that kid that could not stand still just to do work. I don't think I ever wrote an essay.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like when we get kind of oddball guys that maybe just a little bit different, it's like, how do I channel that and use this? And that part's kind of fun for me is like, one side note of this whole the 20, 30 year journey is like, you know, especially with job interviews and training people, like you really get to know how people work. Like I never thought I would know like what keywords to say during an interview and just see how they respond like that, like things like that, the older you get and the longer you stick with this, I think that's why you get better. And the guys that have done this forever that haven't grown and that aren't flourishing, like what are they doing that we're not? Like I think they're not getting uncomfortable and they're staying in their comfort zones from what I understand, or, you know, they're not spending time on their culture or their standards aren't as high. Like I don't know what it is, but I know it's a combination of all of it, or how much of each part of it is, I don't know, but it's like we kind of err on the side of like, yeah, we got to just check all these boxes, which you can't check them all every day. Like we'll check the ones we'll remember today, but there's just so many to do. But it's just that constant kind of push and effort to just like remind people about those plus ones, the trash cans, the sweeping. It's a constant reminder because like they forget they're humans, even though a lot's on the line, we're gonna screw up, and in those moments, like don't freak out, don't scream, just you know, find some compassion and be respectful, but let them know that no, this is not okay, but don't let them walk away with their head down. I don't want I've worked for people that if you mess up, they want you to feel it. Like, yeah, I want you to know you messed up, but I don't want you to like hang your head and be glum all day, like what good does that do for us? But then again, I messed that up and I have come off a little strong and I have done that, but that's another thing. Hell, I mess up way more than I want to. Oh, yeah, man.
Like you said, you like learning from your own mistakes, not
Yeah.
others.
Yeah.
Now, very quickly,
Yeah.
if
So
you
it's just like, why? Or like, I wish I had a dial, like turn this one down up today, turn this one up, but no, it doesn't work.
if you had a box, right? Let's just say you have a box, a black box that you could put away in the corner of your closet for 6 to 12 months, but it will do everything. It'll do any task you want it to do, and it'll do it perfectly. What would you have it do?
And so when I get it in 6 to 12 months, it'll do that task.
No. So
Oh,
you have a black box that's just doing a task that you want it to do
oh,
single day, and it's running automatically, but it's doing it perfectly.
scheduling,
Scheduling?
scheduling. I need AI to understand and adjust our schedule because there's so many, the amount of time and effort it takes to just make sure everybody knows where they're going every day and what they need is three or four of us in a group making sure that that's all right and accurate on a semi-regular daily basis. Sometimes it's 3 minutes, sometimes it's 30, but there's that step in there that's super important, because if we don't do that little step in there, it's just amazing. Like, I don't know how much you know about landscaping, but it's such a fluid industry, especially the way that we do it. Like, my biggest goal on a job is if we're going to be there for 4 months, like about a month in is when I'm going to start pushing new ideas at them. I want to get settled in. I want them to see us working. I want to see the product. I want to like gain their trust and be like, okay, yeah, talk's cheap, but now we've got something to show for it. So like, in those moments, it's like, all right, I got to wait for my window and kind of jump on that. And then you ride that wave because like you want to catch them in an emotional state where they're excited about something. They came home from work and all of a sudden they have a patio and like, holy crap, or your trees got planted today that looks way like in those moments is what I look for. is when they're kind of on a high.
Mm.
And this is just sales, man. I learned this in a seminar, and this is 101. Like you get them in the right mood and you hit them at the right time, the odds of you getting it go up like 75, 80% versus if you can somehow read them and they had a shit day and something's going wrong, just wait till tomorrow. And I've done that, you know, and I've also done it at the wrong time. And two sentences in, I realized today's not the day to do this. But I'm always looking for that in. And once I get that in, you know, my biggest goal is I want to get my estimate on a time and material basis. So if I change enough stuff and enhance this thing a month or two in, you know, they're going to know the pricing the whole time, at least kind of a frame of it. But what happens is on these huge projects, there's so many variables in weather and other contractors that affect your time there that I can't just add 50 to 100,000 on one of these because I won't get the job. But if you're smart and tactful, like in your presentation and your sales, you're going to have a project sold that's going to be $400 to $600,000. You don't know what it's going to cost yet. Either do they, yet they're comfortable with it. And well, yeah, the black box would be our scheduling thing, period. You know, because just to literally come in every day and it already adjusted itself and everyone knows where they're going. And it factored in weather and the changes the customers laid last night and the three people that called in sick and the flat tire. Like that would be nice.
What is probably your biggest bottleneck at the moment for like just blocking you from growing?
Foreman, talented, experienced foreman that can do things other people can't.
How many would you need?
Well, being that it's almost November, I'll take one right now and we'll figure that out. But I'll take one or two more in March. You know, two for sure, three, because right now with seven, 8 crews, we're 4 to 6 months out, which most companies around here are 4 to 8 weeks out. And what I was talking about earlier was, you know, a lot of these contractors that feed us really good work, like we start when they start. So it's like, you know, it's a very uncontrolling moment, you know, when you realize like I don't really have control over all of this that I created, you know. And but there's once you accept that fact, that's when and you truly have to accept it, not just say I accepted it. Accept it. All of a sudden, like the weight and the tension tend to, you know, come off a little bit. And I found there's a lot of like the amount of like talk and prayer that I do throughout my day that nobody knows about just to just to stay even is it's almost constant banter just to get right. So it's just one of those things you just figure out what works for you over many, many years, you
Yeah.
know, but then you start changing. Like, you know, I'm changing right now and I don't even know it. So here in a year or two, I'm going to have to start changing some of these things that I'm not aware of, you know, for A, B, or C. I don't know the reasons yet, but the biggest thing is just knowing that I know that I'm going to have to change again makes it a lot less hard when it comes time to make those changes.
What do you think you would need to change in order to allow yourself to get to the next level?
I don't know. I don't know how to get, and we've got marketing companies. You know, these Indeed ads that we adjust and boost and all this stuff. And, you know, you got to interview almost everybody that applies because you never know.
Mhm.
And I know that we're very picky. And I just know that it's that risk versus reward thing is a pretty big deal to me. Like, I know there's risk here, but like what could happen? And when I'm interviewing a foreman and they're giving you all their answers and you're kind of mentally checking all the boxes, but there's like two boxes that just didn't get checked, but there's 10 that did, and you're like, well, 10 out of 12 is not bad, but man, those two that he didn't check are kind of significant. So it's like there's always these weights and measures and balances and scales. Like, it's risk versus reward, and you just trust your gut. And some days you're nailed it, and some days you're like, God, how did I not see that? Like, where was I? You know? So I don't know. I think if you do this long enough, you just get jaded and I guess calloused a bit to all the chaos. And thank God, if it doesn't affect me like it once did, like I seriously wouldn't be here. I would be doing something else. You know, that's a fact because it's rough. There's some just really rough, awful years to get here, like bad. Like we're going broke, like shit's broken, like no one wants to work, like all of it. It's like I get why people say screw this. I'm going to work at Subway. I get it. Thought about it.
Start to feel for them.
I thought about it.
In
But
today's yeah,
I love it too much.
in today's rapidly evolving market, what trends or technology do you see or you believe that entrepreneurs aren't paying enough attention to?
You know what's weird? Something, and this is something I've heard for a long time, is that say I'm not the only guy they're talking to, and they've talked to a couple other companies, and maybe gotten a couple of designs already. It's kind of crazy how often I hear that when designers come in, we actually have an intern here right now that is a complete pain in the ass. He's right outside that door, so I gotta be quiet. But she's hell bent on convincing clients to do things her way. And there's something to that. Like, you're the professional, you're going to be the one that says yes or no. But if you like, on my first appointment with a potential client, like I've got 20 to 30 questions I'm going to ask them. And depending upon their answers, depends upon so many different things. So to somehow like the best receptions I've got when I've laid out a design, gone through it, is that list of their answers, like, and I even tell them this after that appointment, say, hey, my process is on a big job. My first design is a conceptual design. And what I mean is like I don't have any plants called out. I don't have any materials called out. I have allowances for everything. But on a big project like that, I know that design is based off a conversation and maybe a few inspiration pictures they sent me. And once I get it all to scale, all on paper or on my laptop and in front of them, they're going to see the big picture for the first time in their life. And sometimes it blows them away and they're like, do it, don't change a thing. But more than often than not, 70% of the time, I'm going to do 1 to 3 revisions to either dial in the spaces, dial in some cost. So it's like there's the process to sell $500,000 jobs. Usually a normal one's about 2 months, if you're on top of it and moving. And it's just that's how much time it takes to do that.
Does the business rely on you heavily?
Too much. And I know that. Like if I were to leave, not good.
So what's your plan for that? How do you plan on getting better processes set in place to be more efficient so it needs you less or relies on you
So I'll
less?
tell you what, today we're closer to ever being in a position to do that than we've ever have been. So this last year or two, we've promoted a few people into some management positions. So we have more managers now than we ever have. But at the end of the day, I have the most experience here. I've been through the most. So it's like to lose that player, I don't think any company could fill those shoes. So it's not like if I were to leave, Green Life Gardens wouldn't be affected. Like that's just impossible to think about. But okay, how do we minimize just the disruption, I guess would be one way to put it. Yeah. So I guess that's kind of what I think through, as I'm doing that, I suppose.
Tom, one last question for you. I don't want to take up too much of your time.
Yeah.
If you could go back and give yourself, your younger entrepreneur self, some advice, what would it be and why?
Well, the first thing and this is typical young 20-year-old male shit here, is you see somebody do something and they couldn't do it right, yet I'll step in and be like, watch this, I can do this. Like just full of pride. But that pride got me a lot of places. Be like, hey, like I just felt like I was always out to prove myself. And that was my mentality. And it got me a lot of places I never would have gotten. But if you take it too far, it can be damaging, I guess would be the way I look at it. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
I heard somewhere there's a fine line between pride and ego.
I know, and I'm not gonna sit here and pretend I don't have pride issues. I do, and it's something that I'll probably have to work on. The fact that I can admit that is growth. And just admit that there's a problem. That's kind of step one in fixing it, and just being open to criticism, accountability. These people that we all trust around me, like don't get defensive and emotional if someone brings something to your attention you're not happy about. Like, try not to have your emotions run things, is in which that is hard some days, because when you do care so much and you do take things personal, like how the hell do I not take that personal? So it's just one more thing that I need to get better at, which there's a long list of that.
Tom, I appreciate your time here today. I really, really do.
I appreciate your time, man. This was easy. I've done a handful of these, and this was pretty chill and casual.